Hello. I'm glad you could meet me here today in my large empty warehouse with my cheese. Cheese is milk that's been spoiled on purpose to prevent it from spoiling accidentally. This preserves milk's lifespan, allows for the existence of all of my favorite foods, and means that cheese contains some pretty weird stuff. Here are 5 examples. Okay, if you're going to make milk into cheese, the first thing you need to do is remove the liquids, called the whey, leaving the solids, called the curds. You may know this process by the name curdling. Yeah, the same thing that makes a forgotten quart of milk go all lumpy in your fridge is the first step in cheese making. And most cheeses use the same type of curdling agent at work in your fridge: bacteria. A few types of bacteria eat lactose, the sugar that occurs naturally in milk, and excrete lactic acid. As they do so, the acidity level of the milk increases, which changes the charge of some of milk's molecules, which in turn allows some of the solids that were previously repellent to begin to coagulate. But don't worry, these bacteria aren't dangerous. They actually help fight off hazardous germs, and their excrement adds flavor. Many cheeses receive a second coagulation agent, rennet. Natural rennet comes from the 4th stomach lining of young cows, goats, and sheep. There, it helps the animal digest its mother's milk by separating out the whey from the curds. Traditionally, it's added to cheese by soaking pieces of dried stomach in water, then straining and adding that water to the curdling milk. But hey, animals aren't killed just to make rennet. It's a byproduct of the meat industry, and most rennet these days comes from bacteria that either naturally produce similar enzymes or have been genetically modified to do so. Some plants, like fig leaves and thistle, make rennet-like enzymes too. By the way, if you're curious about all the coagulation chemistry that I keep kind of glossing over, or even if you have a question about another edible, let me know in the comments. I did way too much research for this episode, and I love talking about food and eating food. Milk isn't yellow, so cheese that's yellow or orange contains some kind of coloring. Naturally, that's beta-carotene, you know, the stuff that makes carrots orange. It also occurs in grass. When cows eat lots of fresh grass, the beta-carotene winds up in their milk's fat molecules. There, the color is concealed within protein structures. But during the cheese-making process, the beta-carotene is released, making the cheese yellow. If it's aged a long time, that color can deepen to a natural orange. But the practice of dyeing cheeses artificially originated in 17th century lies. Yes, some cheesemakers began cheating their customers by skimming cream off of their cow's milk. But the resulting cheese was less deliciously fatty and much less yellow since the fatty parts contain the beta-carotene. They tricked customers into buying this cheaper cheese by adding food coloring. Today, dyes help large manufacturers keep their product consistent, especially if they sometimes feed their cows grains and dried grasses, which contain less beta-carotene than fresh grass. Molds in the Penicillium genus love to eat cheese as much as we do. Normally, you'd want to remove any fungus growing on your cheese, but 2 particular species, P. roqueforti and P. glaucum, are encouraged in blue cheeses. As a byproduct of existing, they give those cheeses their characteristic textures and flavors by accelerating the breakdown of proteins and fats in the curd, making the cheese creamier and giving it that tangy flavor. But mold isn't only for blue cheeses. Other species of Penicillium, specifically subspecies of P. camemberti, are sprayed on the outside of soft ripened cheeses like brie as they age. These molds also break down proteins in the curds, but in this case, the result is that white semi-firm rind around the runny curd within. You may have noticed that your favorite bright orange, shelf-stable nacho ingredient declares itself pasteurized processed cheese food or spread or product. This is science cheese, configured in laboratories to melt better, cost less, stay fresh longer, and be perfectly consistent from batch to batch. Here in the US, the FDA only requires these products to consist of 51% cheese by final weight. The other 49% can be lots of stuff, including but not limited to emulsifiers to keep the product smooth when heated, acidifying agents to speed up production, mold inhibitors, which are pretty self-explanatory, moisture-binding gums or hydrocolloids to make the product more spreadable, and sweeteners and other flavor enhancers. Of course, these are not the only weird ingredients that have ever been put into cheese. Like, worms, anyone? You can hear that story in this video right here. And if you want to learn lots more about everything from cheese to chili peppers, check out HowStuffWorks.com.